Hey guys, welcome into Something Like Therapy. Today, Jess and I are talking about the rise of victim society. So it seems like nowadays victimhood is trending and trauma seems to be worn as a badge of honor on social media. So we discuss some of our thoughts and opinions on victim society, kind of give some insights on our personal experience with it, and talk more on how we can avoid becoming a victim of victim society. So without further ado, let's get into it. How's it going, everyone? Welcome in.
Welcome back to Something Like Therapy.
Make sure we get the name in, so they know what they're listening and watching, right?
I just wanted to throw in the title because I felt like today was going to be kind of like a real therapy session. So,
we're actually really doing therapy. So something like real therapy.
something like, just throwing it out there, we're not professionals, we're not doctors. There's our disclosure.
Yeah, disclaimers.
Or disclaimer, I'm sorry.
Exactly. Actually, yeah, let's go ahead and let's hit that
Let's
for
start
today.
with
We
that,
probably
yeah.
should. This might be like disclaimer of sensitive topics discussed, triggering topics for some. So, yeah, I think we should just probably do that, or maybe put that at the beginning of every show, because I don't know, but then anything can trigger anyone. So, I don't know, we could be talking about anything that's like, I'm triggered. It's my trigger word.
I think we're pretty good for the most part at like letting people know that these are our personal experiences or opinions.
Yeah.
Like we're not
People watching
we're not therapists, we're not
Exactly.
doctors, we're not professionals. We're just
Oh, should I stop putting Dr. Derick in the in the description? I should probably remove
maybe
that.
you probably should, huh?
Yeah, people watch enough social media, which is a big part of today's topic.
Yeah.
And enough YouTube to understand that, like, people are just, I mean, for the most part, I would hope people are just going on and sharing their personal experiences or their opinions and thoughts on topics rather than, like, this is the right way to look at it. I hope no one views anything like that. I mean, honestly, I hate to sound like someone like, oh, just question everything, but I don't know, even like doctors and scientists, I'm like, I'm going to at least leave a little bit of room for like, maybe you're wrong, maybe you don't know,
Yeah.
So I think that should just be with everything, but.
Yeah. I say to each their own, figure out what works for them, what doesn't.
Exactly,
and,
right?
Yeah.
So today we are going to be discussing victim society. And this is something that we've been talking about for, I don't know, a while now, but it always becomes like, and I'm going to really do my best to not sound like our boomer parents or like the get off my lawn old man. I'm not attacking any specific generation. I'm not attacking any specific types of people, but we're just discussing.
You do have very strong opinions.
Yeah, I think I need to take the whole trigger warning, to heart with it, because I get just kind of, I turn into like, what really grinds my gears about these people. But so yeah, we're gonna be talking about victim society, and it's something that I probably in the last 5 years ish, the last decade for sure. It's probably more, because it's not like the new Gen Z generation has started therapy. It was actually millennials were the ones that actually brought more talk therapy and the boom of like medications for different disorders and things like that was before they were even around. So we can't put it blame them on it, but yeah, it's just become more and more apparent and evident in society that people tend to want to use their past traumas, their upbringing or past struggles, and use that as like a shield or as like a more of like an identity of who they are and who they'll ever be. Like this is because of this is who I am, and I can't do anything about it, sort of thing. And I also want to premise too and say that not in any way is it our desire to belittle or say that trauma isn't a real thing, or that trauma isn't something that can really, shape and define a person, because it definitely is. You and I have both discussed past traumas, our own traumas of childhood, of just a young adulthood, of even, just adulthood now. And it does impact who we are, how we think, how we view the world, how we view our relationships. But it's something that, which we will discuss. People take different paths on how to deal with that.
Right.
And pretty much, I want to kind of go over, or at least read, what our friend AI defines victim society. It says it's a society characterized by pervasive victim mentality, or a culture where individuals identify with their victimhood, attributing their struggles to external forces and shrinking personal responsibility. I think that shrinking personal responsibility kind of stands out as like a, damn, that was mean. But it's like, it kind of does. And that's kind of what we want to, go into, where, again, people want to take the past and things that have happened and kind of blame that. I blame my parents, I blame my siblings, I blame my teachers, I blame my little league coach for not playing me more, and it made me have a stigma about myself that I'm not good enough, and now I can't get a good job. It's just like, okay, that could definitely, have shaped you and, caused you to believe a certain way about yourself. However, as an adult, you should take things that have happened and take time to reflect and take time to think about it and find ways to, to heal, to move on, to use that to maybe strengthen you. So that's kind of what we want to discuss today, in a nutshell there, victim society, and kind of go into, the different parts of it, how it's come about, how it is different for, different people, specifically in the different, age groups of generations, and how we kind of all tackle that, how we tackle our trauma and what we do to move on. So what do you want to add before we kind of get into our bullet points?
I feel like you kind of wrapped up the whole episode there.
Oh, well, you guys have a great day.
I was like, yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, I don't know.
Outro music.
So, I want to say, when I noticed the, victim society or the victim mindset start kind of being exposed more, was definitely once social media became a thing. Once people were given a platform to express themselves, to share their thoughts, before even, Instagram, I think Instagram became a huge platform for people to not only express themselves with words, but now we get like a visual, right? Like where it's like people are making little videos, little clips of like, oh my God, this happened to me, and this. And as time went on, the sharing became more and more intense and like, more detailed, deeper, got more personal. But I feel that maybe about, right around like COVID, where people had more time to think and more time to kind of sit there and really process, some of the things that they've experienced. I think these last 5 years have been probably one of the most just impactful. I think a lot of us felt like we had, time to really sit and for once in our life, like really listen to ourselves and, go deep. And we had the time and the means to be able to, process and see the things that we were struggling with. So, but I think some people took it to the point where not only did they identify what their struggles were, but they got so wrapped up in it that now it just became their whole entire identity. And I think ever since COVID, it has just gotten, it's just turned into something else. And, but I think in some way, like you said, it's been way before that, and I think for millennials, we I wouldn't say that we started the whole victim society, but I think in some way we started the awareness part of it, of becoming aware of our trauma, our struggles. Because I think, our parents' generation, especially the boomers, they weren't given the space to do that. So it was just very different. Sure. It's just very different. The way we were raised, the way we grew up, completely different. So I think that it's not so much that people, are just, this generation was just born, Generation Z or, Generation Alpha. Like, they weren't just born with this, like, chromosome in them that was just like, hey, you're just going to be a victim now. Like, I think they were kind of set up that way. Yeah. And it just, they in some way almost feel like if they don't share, then they're being fake, or they're, you know what I mean? So,
yeah. And to like what you said in regards to like it really taking off from COVID, like one, because like, yeah, you said everyone was locked up and just had time to, kind of sit and reflect on everything. And then, it was the boom of social media in 2019 and 2020 because everyone was like, well, I got to communicate with everyone. So TikTok blew up and, Instagram and everything. So that kind of coincided. It worked in a tandem there. But it really does make me think, too, because like I mentioned, how we process things or how we look at things is different generation. So you have the boomers, you have Gen X, you have millennials, and now we have Gen Z and Gen Alpha, which like talking about alpha is like, what are they, like 7, 8, 9, 10? Like is alphas?
No, because 14? I want to say our teens.
They're alpha? I thought they would still be Gen Z.
Oh no, I think they are Gen Z.
So that's what I'm saying. So Gen Alpha might be a little too soon to drag them into anything yet.
But I will say, because we have a nephew that is Generation Alpha, and
when did Z stop?
I don't know. We're gonna have to look that up.
Well, yeah.
But I do know that he's Gen Alpha, and I want to say he's 8, 9. I don't know how old he is. That's so sad.
Okay, so then we'll just say like preteens are probably alpha.
So I want to say he's about 9 years old. Yeah. So preteen.
So
anyhow, what I wanted to say with the Gen Alpha is that, because you mentioned they're not old enough to see, and I already see some of the behaviors.
Yeah, by 8, 9, 10, for sure. I thought they were more like 3, 4. Like, right. I'm like, we can't.
Not necessarily that we see. Our nephew or other kids his age that they are already trying to adopt the victim mentality, not in any way, but you can kind of see how they're starting to almost identify to how they might have been victimized in some way, and
we'll get to why, because we like with the point we want to make in regards to how victim society has now been was it monetized? Yeah, monetized on social media and just in pharma and everything. So
I think we can see it as early. I would say even as the toddler years.
Especially by, like I said, if alpha is considered like 8, 9, 10, I'm sure there's like a 10-year-old that's already created an app and he's the CEO of his own company. Like they're that smart. So they're already dealing with like grown-up issues by 10. So I could understand that. But what I was saying before in regards to how the different generations kind of handle this or how they even view this topic differs, which that's kind of an obvious thing. And because you were talking about COVID and how it became more apparent or really took off at that time. And it makes me think of how people, when we discuss, it could be anything like, oh, this wasn't, really apparent. Like, you might get a boomer that's like, depression and anxiety and all these things, they didn't exist back, in my day. And it's like, it didn't exist because there wasn't a means for people to communicate.
Right.
You talk to the people in your city. That's about it. If you had a car, maybe the next city. Like, you didn't know what was happening in a different county. You definitely didn't know what was happening in a different state or on the other side of the country or other side of the world. Things are more apparent. And it goes, too, with, like, it's like, percentage of, like, crimes or people say like, oh, it was safer for kids. Like kids weren't getting kidnapped back in the 70s and stuff. They could walk the streets. No, kidnaps were happening. We just didn't know that much about them. Now
they
we know.
Did do a study that there was a lot more crime back then.
Exactly, because it was more of a thing. It was never counted. Like we didn't know about it. So like now we can go.
There was no evidence of it. There was no videos, nothing.
We know about everything that's happening everywhere in the world because we have social media, because we have internet. So to say that like, depression and anxiety and all these things are like, that's a new generation thing. Like, no, it's not. The people have been suffering from these disorders for a while. It's just become more apparent because we have, newer technology that allows us to bring it to our attention. But definitely like in regards to like trauma, that probably really boomed, I would say, after as early as like I said, probably throughout history it's been there, but like it really took off, especially in America, like after the wars and stuff, when like the guys were coming back from war and they had PTSD. A lot of that probably, they were suffering in silence from it. And
well, they didn't know what it was.
Exactly. It wasn't known as PTSD back then. It was just like, oh, this dude's crazy. Like
they didn't have the words or the language to be able to identify or express it. And it's unfortunate. Yeah.
And boomers grew up in that generation to where if, like we just watched, Punch Drunk Love yesterday, and he was just like, sometimes I just cry and I don't know why. And it's just like, there are a lot of people still like sad. That. Yeah. Like where they don't have anyone around them to help them, or they, it's weird to say people may not have access to internet now, but like, I feel like that was like boomers back, when they were younger and going through it and stuff. Because they were just always in a generation where it was taught to like, well, if you're sad, I don't know, get over it. It's the whole like shake it off. It's the whole like, come on, just forget it, like rub it and let's go. So they have a very like shut off or avoidance kind of attitude toward it. And I think the first the first generation of their kids, which would have been Gen X, they probably began to like, hey, something's not right. I don't feel right. But it was still like, they still had the parents that were like teaching them like, no, you will grow up like how we grew up, which is just like, you be quiet about it.
I think they didn't have a safe place.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like it was barely maybe coming around of like sadness, depression, barely. By the time,
because at that point now, there was more like television shows that showed like families and, maybe more like issues or struggles. Also, there was a lot more activism and like, movements with like women's rights and like all these different things that were beginning to happen that people started to understand like, wait, the way things aren't necessarily right. So then maybe how I feel isn't necessarily like okay. So it's like, I think there are a lot of things began to come up where it started causing them to ask questions.
Yeah.
And, not just like, well, this is how you do things and this is how we're going to deal with it, I think in a way for the Gen X, they kind of rebelled a little bit more. They rebelled more against their parents. They did more things that were, kind of like, question whether, it was right or wrong. But I think they began a movement in, towards mental health, I think without them even knowing. I would say they were the ones that kind of pioneered the, mental health awareness. And then once millennials came in, because we saw our parents fight a little bit more, compared to our grandparents.
Yeah, and again, like as the generations moved on, it just became more and more like accepted, or just again, we became more aware of them, of different disorders, and I guess you can say like like you said, like a safe place. Places began to get safer in which you could express, hey, I have depression and I need to see a therapist. Where like, again, boomers were just like, you still have some, it's like till this day will not go see a therapist because it's just like, I don't know, why am I going to tell a stranger about my problems? But like, I feel like with a lot of things, we kind of just overcompensated. And I think I didn't understand the overcompensation until, we became parents, and then now we're a grandparent, where it's just like, we just want more and more for like our kids. Like I don't want them to go through what I went through, sort of thing. And I think that really kind of led to, again, where we're at now, to where we have a generation where, not that it is wrong to express how you feel, however, it is so mainstream and it is so much in kids' faces at such an early age, because like we said, we have 9 and 10-year-olds who are masters at computers, masters at tablets and phones, and 8-year-olds that have an Instagram account and go scroll through TikTok and scroll through YouTube, and they're being fed, oh, depression, anxiety, you have this, you have that. So it becomes more in their face, to where, again, and it's almost like you can't blame them, because how are they not going to then begin to question, well, something of like what depression really is, where it's a never-ending feeling of dread and despair, versus like, well, sometimes I feel a little sad, I have depression. Like, no, that's called being a human being. That's not depression. But it's, again, like, who are we to say if they have depression or not? And what makes it worse is that then they go to a licensed or certified therapist, or maybe someone online or something, and it goes into the point of like where it's become a way to just make money, in regards to like, they want everyone to have depression, they want everyone to have anxiety, and until it now becomes like, this is people's identity, this is the identity of our society, of like, we've turned into very, very fragile people. And again, everyone has trauma. Like, I don't know if there's a human being that's walking on this earth that something hasn't happened to them. But everyone deals with those things differently. I think the reason why we really wanted to do, I think the first thing we mentioned about this victim society is like, you can just get on TikTok or any of the social medias or YouTube, and it's just like anything, where you have like the gym bros of like, oh, I can bench 225, like I can bench 235. You have that mentality of like, oh, I'm on this medication for depression. Like, oh, I took that. I'm taking that and this for anxiety because I have both. And it's just like, when did it become like a flex to have more diagnosis? I mean, we've even had friends and family in the past that like would discuss with us like, yeah, I keep going back, like I'm switching doctors because this doctor doesn't want to diagnose me. I keep telling them like, these are the exact symptoms, and it's almost like, did you find these symptoms online? And it's just like, this is what you're telling them. But there was like, I have these exact things, I know what my diagnosis is, and he refuses to give it to me. And it's like, they want that diagnosis to just check it off. And again, that's why we wanted to do or talk about it, because like I said, the whole badge of honor mentality, where I have more diagnosis, I'm on more medications, therefore I'm more broken, and that makes me cooler. And it's not a good, healthy way for any society to live by. So
I kind of want to go back really quick to something you were talking about, like therapy, and how people, I'm a huge believer in therapy and talk therapy. I do believe that everyone at some point should see a therapist. And and I know that a lot of people are kind of like, no, I don't need a therapist, I don't need this, I don't need that. I get it, because I think what people are afraid of is getting stuck in therapy. Where like, now you feel like you need to just continue seeing this therapist. But as you were talking about that, I was thinking about the episode for Modern Family, where Cam goes to see what's his husband's name? I always forget his name. His husband's therapist.
Oh.
And he literally just walks in, and it's like 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, he was able to process an entire trauma And Mitch is his, he was like, I've been seeing him for years.
Yeah, and I
still have not been able to process my trauma. And, you know, I just thought that was a perfect example for people. You know, some people do need a little bit longer, but I think the people that become dependent on their therapist or just therapy in general, there's a part of those people where they just want to be heard, right? They could have just been years where they were forced to. I mean, we see in Modern Family that his dad obviously was just very like, no, we don't talk about that. I mean, he didn't realize he was gay for how long, you know? So anyways, my point is that, you know, I think everyone is going to be different, but I do feel that in some way, whether it's because of money or, you know, just insurances obviously make more money if you go to therapy longer, whether it's for money or it's just because we, without knowing as a society, have made people dependent on, you know, therapists or medication or just the need to be heard, that we have been feeding this like victim society, this is victim mindset. And it has turned into this, I'll go as far as saying almost like monster, because it's just like our kids. I mean, you have young kids, again, I'll take it to Generation Alpha, where they're like, they know what gaslighting is. How the hell do you know what gaslighting is? Like, they can give you the full freaking definition. Like, you're gaslighting me or you're stepping over my boundaries. That's great. I'm glad you know what boundaries are. I love that. I freaking love that. I wish I would have known that.
But you can't tell your teacher when you say, why don't you have your homework? Like, bro, you're in my boundary right now. Like, what?
And, you know, I mean, for us, you know, when we were younger, we would have our personal little bubble. You know, like, there was still something kind of like childlike about it. You know, the way that we were growing up and we were taught, like, you know, don't allow people in your personal space, your personal bubble. But now it's like this, they can almost give you the definition of things. And it's like, what are we doing by giving our kids so much information that they're just not capable of truly understanding what that is and how they're using it? I'm not saying that it's not a good idea to educate them and to teach them, but what are we doing? Like, how are we setting our kids up to now in the future thinking that they have to have not only boundaries, but there's these walls where, like, no one could ever, you know, reach them in any way because they're too scared to be victimized again. You know, I mean, I don't know if I kind of went off, but I just feel I just, you know, again, like, awareness is great, and I think it's something that we all need to have, but it's just, I think about the type of information and awareness that is being brought to very young minds, and I really do wonder, like, how is this shaping their brain? How is this, like, you know, just shaping their future without them even really understanding, like, how it's gonna look like.
And it's like it's a proven thing, you know, like the brain when it's developing, there's a lot of things that it's not capable of understanding or processing when they're certain ages. And again, I know that differs between like girls and boys. You know how, you know, girls tend to mature a lot faster. Their brain kind of develops a lot faster. Takes a little bit for guys to catch up. But like either way, no matter boy or girl, like when they're kids, I just don't think it is, and I agree with you, you know, it's good to educate them and make them aware, but don't flood them with so much at such a young age. But again, I think we've lost all control of that as a society because we're just like, well, I don't want you to learn too much, but here's your iPhone that has all the information in the world, and it has Chat GPT that you can ask anything and it's going to give you all the information. So yeah, at like 7 years old, they know what gaslighting is. They know what like boundaries are, and they know what all these big, you know, like confusing disorders and confusing topics. It's already in their brain, and their brain isn't capable of processing it and understanding it. So now they're just regurgitating what they read. It's sort of like how we make fun of people that, like, you know, oh, I have this, and this. Like, why do you think that? Like, well, I read it on WebMD. Like, you have no idea what you're talking about. So then, yeah, you have these kids going around saying that their teacher is gaslighting them. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
No, man, he's not. He's telling you that you need to shut up and sit in your desk and you can't talk. And it's like, well, that's my right. My parents told me don't ever let anyone tell me what I can and can't do. And it's like, so again, and that's a different topic. Maybe we'll do a whole
really quick in regards to that, because I think it does have something to do with it, because I feel that a lot of parenting, especially from millennials, I will say, and Gen X as well, where we parented from fear because of our own experiences, because of our own traumas.
Overcompensating.
Right? So the way we are parenting is from a place of fear instead of a place of, more confidence, more, yes, boundaries, but also, how about respect? How about understanding that not everyone is out to get you, understanding that not all teachers, are, because again, the whole, how kids are with teachers now has a huge, there's a whole reason why that is happening, is because we saw, some teachers, yes, cross boundaries. Some teachers were being abusive. There's no denying that. And again, we can thank social media for all of that. And, I think a lot of it, I don't know if we were talking about that or not yet, but, with so many known cases of child abuse, child trafficking, all these things that are coming up that are very true. And I'm glad that in, some way we're being informed and we've opened our eyes to so many things. I mean, we hear about things that have happened in the past with, child actors. And it's funny, one of my high school friends sent me an article about our high school teachers. They're opening a bunch of cases because they were, sexually assaulting, students, and, hopefully this isn't triggering for anyone, but there's things that happened. And I think that caused a lot of parents to parent from a place of fear. And ultimately, all we're doing is passing on, without knowing, passing on our trauma to now our kids. And now our kids are internalizing our trauma. And now they think that they are in the place where we were. And not to say that we don't ever prepare our children to identify that. But I think without knowing, we are kind of passing on. I want to say it's almost like a generational thing that has, been happening for a long time. And now with social media kind of reinforcing that fear or that thought, it's just getting worse and worse. And it's just, again, like at some point, how much information do we really need to be, to go from like awareness to now we're just like in complete fear and terror? Like, where do we draw the line there? Because I don't know if I'm going into a completely different topic, but I feel that has a lot to do with it. And I think a lot of a lot of kids are internalizing their parents' experiences, or maybe even somebody else's experience, because they hear somebody else like,
they saw it in a movie, or a friend went through that. So
and
then
immediately identify with it. And not to say, again, like, and you said it, not to, discredit anybody else's experience, or trauma is real, and we know that. But I also feel like how much of that is truly our experience versus somebody else's experience. And
what we're being told is trauma. And again, what one thing could be for one person may not be for another person. Someone could go through something and be like, man, that sucked. Another person can go through it and be like, dear God, that changed my life. So where do we draw the line? Like, I think they said, like, if everything is trauma, then nothing is trauma. So it's like, and going back to like the whole therapy discussion before, or I think it started out as like, no, okay, people were getting educated in it, in in learning psychology and learning therapy practices to be able to help people. And I think it started out like talk therapy was there to help people identify, address,
And
process, heal, grow. But I think therapy's now turned into talk, cry, repeat.
Well,
Let's just do this over again.
That was another thing where they said like therapy has, turned into from like, a place where you can process to now a monthly subscription.
Exactly.
And it's
yeah.
like, holy
it's
crap.
Like,
when I heard that, I was like, oh, that is so true.
They even have the whole, I mean, even on some of the sports podcasts I listen to where it's like, BetterHelp. Where it's like for so much a month.
I will say I did see one of their therapists and they're really good.
And I'm saying like you can have that, but like how we always say, yeah, right.
We'll tag them.
The same thing we say with like when it comes to like working out. Like if you get a trainer, and I think we said this on the last episode, if the trainer isn't about like, okay, I need to know what is your past history with training and working out. And secondly, and most important, what are your goals? What are we working towards so that we know when we get there, like, we're good. If you don't have a therapist that, like, is pushing you to move past, is pushing you to grow, but just allows you to kind of stay comfortably numb, comfortably broken, because it just means, like, well, they're going to be back next month. Right. So then you need to get a new therapist. The same way you would have to get a new trainer if that trainer wasn't, about setting goals and having you meet those goals. The whole therapy shtick has kind of just morphed its way into with everything with like big pharma and medication, and they work hand in hand. Like, okay, yeah, it sounds like you had trauma. It sounds like you have depression and anxiety now from that. Let me go ahead and get you to a psychiatrist. They write you a script for whatever medication. And then again, it's like, not that I'm saying some people do need this medication, but it shouldn't be a long-term solution. It should be, let's get you on the lowest dose possible if that's necessary, and let's try to get you past this. And again, I know it's not so black and white, and sometimes anxiety and depression, maybe it will be with someone for their whole life.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
You learn, and I know you can speak personally to this, where you had spouts of really intense anxiety, but through different processes of talk therapy, of, being more physically active, doing, taking on more hobbies, just getting out there, it's helped you to live with it.
Nothing was going to replace me enduring a little bit of exposure therapy. Meaning like going out there and just facing some of my fears. That ultimately ended up being the best medication that I could have taken, was being willing to go out there and just show up and face some of the fears. Now, if I would have found out, holy crap, every time I go out, I'm going to pass out and I'm hyperventilating and I can't handle, the stress and the anxiety because it's so overwhelming. If I did that numerous times and I realized I feel like I'm going to die every time I go out, well then, maybe some medical intervention is going to help, right? But for the most part, one of the first times that I went out there, that I went to see a psychiatrist, because I had a session with a therapist, and when I was explaining to her what I was going through, which now I know, I'm just going to throw this out there, I know it had a lot to do with my hormones, and I know that I was going through a lot of changes at the time, and when I look back on it, I'm like, I wasn't crazy, I was just literally in the beginning of perimenopause, and holy shit, I didn't know that could make you feel crazy, So anyways, I digress with that, but
that's a whole topic.
That's a whole,
you can do a solo pod.
But again, I just, the reason I threw that out there is because I don't think medication would have really helped me.
No. If you're having hormonal issues, why would anti-anxiety medication help?
It just, maybe numbed me a little bit for the moment, but the only thing that ultimately ended up helping me was making more positive, changes in my life and choices. But immediately they kind of, were like, well, yeah, your symptoms are pretty intense, so let's refer you to a psychiatrist. And I think they referred me within 2 or 3 days. I was at the psychiatrist's office, and right away they were like, you need to be on Xanax. And I'm like, what?
I've been here for 8 minutes.
Yeah, and I couldn't. And I think they were like trying to diagnose me with like borderline personality disorder, like all these things. And I feel like for a minute there, I really internalized that, and I was like, oh shit, I almost have like a split personality. Like, I'm really crazy, and it doesn't help that you're already feeling so disconnected from yourself when you're experiencing anxiety or depression or whatever it is that you might be going through. You're feeling so disconnected from yourself that you go and you trust a professional, and then they tell you like, oh yeah, you're kind of crazy. Oh yeah, your trauma, it caused you to now just create a whole other persona, and now you just bounce off from I mean, I literally had a doctor or a therapist tell me this, and I was like, and I internalized that for a long time, but something in me was just like, no, I don't, it doesn't sit right. But what if it would have been someone that is just really vulnerable? I mean, I felt like I was vulnerable, but there was a part of me that knew that I had to really push through. Yeah, because I'm like, I don't want to be on medication. I've tried Xanax one time because the doctor, when I had just had one of our youngest, I couldn't sleep. I was struggling. I'm pretty sure I was going through, just a lot of, changes and stuff. And they gave me Xanax, and I was like, no, I feel like shit. Like, I literally just want to sleep. Like, this isn't good. So I wasn't going to try that again. Yeah. But again, I do feel that a lot of the times, these therapists or these doctors, psychiatrists, they kind of want to put you on. I mean, this is just my opinion. This isn't to bash any doctors out there or therapists. I've had really good therapists, and I really appreciated. I thought they were amazing. They gave me, more natural ways of like dealing with stress and anxiety. So not all are like this, but you do find that some will want to immediately put you on medication, because what happens now, you have to keep coming back to keep having that medication refilled. And it's like they create this trend, and now before you know it, I mean, there's people that I've known, like you said, have been on medication for years, and then on top of that, they walk around comparing medications, and it's like, dude, that is so personal. Like,
we talked about that, where we literally, both of us have been in situations where we see these two people going at it, and they're just listing the medications that
I'm surprised they don't pop up their pills
on,
and like
what they've been on and what they're doing now, and it's just like, and wow, that, again, it's the badge of honor thing.
It is. Like, and there's something about someone, and it happens in a lot of things. It's not just in depression. I mean, we've been in groups, especially when we were going to church, where if someone was a victim of, abuse or whatever the abuse was, or some kind of violence, there was a particular person that would always share about how many times they were abused. And they would always, it was just like, I don't know why they like, almost like when they talk about it, they get bigger, and they're like, almost like, my trauma's bigger, and my trauma's like so much more intense. And it's funny because I also see that in recovery groups. Yeah. Oh, I started drinking at 12. Oh, I started drinking at 5. Yeah. Like, what? Oh, okay. It doesn't matter when you started. Yeah. Like, what matters is that you're here, and obviously you're trying to do something about it. So it's like, but there is something about being more broken.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like you said, you mentioned, if you go in and you have at least some sense to like, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to be open to this, but I'm going to, not question everything, but just keep an open mind also to the fact that, hey, maybe I need to do my own research and this and that. But you do get a lot of people that are vulnerable and will just like, well, the doctor said so I'm going to do it. And what makes it even worse is that, again, and it goes back to the society now of like Gen Z and the younger, because they've already been reading since they've had a phone about depression, about anxiety. What are the symptoms? So they go to the therapist or the doctor, and they sit there and I have this, I feel this, I feel this. And it's like they've literally maybe convinced themselves that they do have all these things. Mm-hmm. And thought and words and telling yourself over and over have power. Like it really does. If you sit there and you tell yourself, I have anxiety, that makes me scared, this worries me, you can create that, you know? So what's sad, again, you have therapists and doctors that, again, because it's a big money making industry in regards to therapy, in regards to putting people on medication. And it even comes to just like, not even like mental disorders, but just, again, someone goes and it's just like, yeah, you're like, you're pre-high blood pressure or whatever.
Pre-diabetic.
Pre-diabetic, but like having high blood pressure, not diabetic.
Hypertension.
Pre-hypertensive. Right away, they're like, but we can start you on a low medication. Why not change their diet and put them on an exercise program? Because that's probably going to help someone who's not go over to the full, and it'll help them. So you also get, you have a teenager, and I'll just use a 14-year-old who the parents seem like we're going to put them in therapy because they've just been so isolated. And it's like, yep, your kid has depression, let's put him on medication. So it's not the fact the kid is getting 2 hours of sleep, all he eats is flaming fucking Takis, he's on his phone 18 hours a day, he never comes out of his room, doesn't do any type of cardio or any type of exercise whatsoever, just plays Fortnite. And he goes and he scrolls through TikTok, which is just brain rot. It's not that, right? Let's not try to eliminate or adjust some of those, behaviors.
Yeah.
Let's just put on medication. So it gets very like frustrating because there's a lot of different ways that we could be helping people, but we choose to just go with the quick fix of
and we can
money making.
Speak from personal experience in regards to the example of the 14-year-old that has horrible lifestyle habits, and they're just going through depression and anxiety. We had, unfortunately, firsthand experience with our oldest, and if you want to talk about trauma, not only did he obviously endure his own trauma, but his teenage years traumatized us.
Yeah. I have trauma.
I have trauma from his freaking teenage years, But I think a lot of it was because, and I want to say this because if you're the parent that is questioning whether you should put your child on medication or not, because you see them struggling and going through things like, no shame. I get it. We've been there and we tried. We took him to so many therapists. There's so many doctors. He was even, they were trying to tell us that he might have been bipolar. It's so crazy because, and I'm going to share this and I hope my son is okay with us sharing this, but, I really do think that he was trying really hard to find something to identify with, because it was like, to this day, he's like, do you think I'm this? Do you think I'm that? And I'm like, buddy, no, but again, it's because when the mind is developing, it's the minute it hears something, it's automatically going to grab. We do that too.
That's every teen that they want to be a part of something.
Yes.
This is who I am. This is what I represent. So when they're searching for it, and again, that generation just has a lot of, that's something you can really dive into because there's a lot of us. There's a lot of people suffering from these mental disorders. And
I think Gen Z, more than any other generation, is probably going to be more prone to identifying with what they, what they hear about more than any other generation because of the massive amount of information that they have at their fingertips. Exactly. And I think for Alpha, it's going to be 100 times worse.
They live.
But I will say though, and I want to just give props to Gen Z, that I think they're beginning to change that narrative a little bit because they're starting to see wait a minute, I can't be putting all these labels on myself. I see a shift. But I still see that there's kind of a divide where there's some that are fully oh no, I'm this and this and this and this and this. And then I see the other ones that are a little bit more reserved with their own diagnoses towards themselves because they're starting to see I don't want to look like that. I don't want to look like that. I don't want to be that victim, And a lot of it is because, they see people just putting all their shit out there on social media, and to them that's like, no, that's embarrassing.
Yeah, well, it turns, finally, like something clicks where it turns embarrassing, but at first it's interesting and it's intriguing. And that's why Gen Z, you could almost even say they're like the poster children of like trauma and victimhood, because they've been fed it through social media. I mean, you have like, TikTok with like, it's become an ongoing just joke. I mean, there's like memes of like how much trauma you have, or memes of different things, and then you have people going on, and it's just like they don't even give disclaimers. They're just literally diagnosing, like, oh, if you feel this, this, and this is what you have. And it's like, so when you ask the kid, like, well, why do you think you have this? Like, well, where did you hear this? It was on someone's TikTok. Like, I mean, I get it. TikTok is a place that gives you a lot of information and like keeps you up to date on what's happening, but definitely I wouldn't use TikTok to be diagnosing myself. But it's like, again, when you're 13, 14, you don't have that reasoning to like, hey, this isn't, but eventually it turns into, like I said, they're getting smarter, and like they begin to just like, they're starting to finally see like, oh, wait a minute, like there's like millions of accounts that like are all saying this, and I think they're all just kind of saying this just to say it now. It's like a clout to have like these anxieties or whatever.
Gen Z now is going into their mid-20s, and they're starting to mature.
They're becoming adults, and they're
becoming adults. So there's a shift happening, and they're starting to. And I think we've talked about this in the past, where whether the fact that they have all this information is going to be a good thing or a bad thing. Like, we won't know until they're in their 40s whether all this information ended up being good or bad.
Yeah.
I want to have the hope and say that I think it's going to be a good thing, only because I feel like they're going to be able to make, I hope, educated decisions and a more educated choice on whether they're gonna go to see a therapist or not, whether they feel like, I think they're just gonna have a little bit more awareness of whether they need help or not. I mean, I don't know, like that's just me being hopeful, because I do feel that for us, for millennials, it was still a little hard. Like, I talk to people our age. I'm in my almost mid-40s, and people still like, I don't want to see a therapist. Like, they still look at you like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like, why would you want to do that? Like, I don't know. Maybe because I don't have someone that I can trust, and I don't want to just be venting to just anyone. Definitely don't want to be posting on social media about, all what I'm going through. Yeah. I want to have a place to be able to do that and to process. And then once I'm ready, I move on,
And again, like with anything, most of it, with all the episodes we do, like, we feel we talk about this, one, because we're not saying like, oh, we're experts and this is why you should be watching this, because no, this is just stuff that we talk about. But what I'm saying is, like, we feel that we can talk about this because we ourselves have gone through it. And it's like we always say with, especially with our oldest, who's, in his early 20s, like, we want to like just be able to, he's going through stuff and just like, let me just do this for you. Let me just show you this is the way to do it. But that's the hardest job as a parent, even with our teenagers still. Like, we have to let them live their life. They have to learn, because people will not truly learn a lesson in life until they go through it. Right. We can tell them over and over. They can hear friends. They can hear their friends' parents. They went through the same exact things. They can literally see it. But they will still do it because they won't learn the lesson until they experience the pain and trauma or the happiness or whatever emotions come from it, until they experience themselves. So we're, we can sound like we're ragging on Gen Z, but I mean, I'm sure Gen X could have done a podcast, if there was podcasting back then in the 80s, and been like, these fucking millennials, dude, they're idiots, dude. Like, because we hadn't gone through it. But like you said, now that we're in our 40s, we went through the whole learning about trauma, and then I need therapy. Oh my God, do I have anxiety? Oh my God, do I have depression? And we finally went through all of it to, get to our 40s. And sometimes it's in people's early years of 20s, 30s, 40s, and sometimes it takes longer, in their 50s or 60s, where they don't make the realization, hey, let's stop romanticizing, or what's the word? Romanticizing trauma. Let's stop making it such a thing to where it's holding me prisoner, holding me captive in life, and let me be the one to say, like, no, fuck it, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to let it be the thing that I identify with or that controls me. Like pretty much we have to allow them to, because like we said, the older they get, they begin to look back on it and saying like, yeah, I was a little dramatic back then. Maybe I wasn't suffering from, debilitating depression. I just maybe needed to go to the gym or like to go on a walk, So we have to learn, or they have to learn, just like we learned, that it's about overcoming, it's about growing. And you can use the tools of therapy and meds, but they're just tools. They're not things that should be, a crutch for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I don't know. This was like a while back, but we were watching or listening to an episode on Modern Wisdom, and he was interviewing a doctor talking about depression and how, he was a huge believer in medical intervention as far as if you needed medication for it or not. He said, but one thing I noticed is that for people that were on medication and medication only, their relief from like the symptoms of depression or anxiety was probably about maybe anywhere from like 30 to 40% effective, versus the people that were taking medication, partnering it with healthier choices, being active, being, just more conscious of like, their stressors and things like that. Their success with the medication like almost doubled.
Yeah.
And so that just goes to show that if you are struggling with depression, with anxiety, if you're feeling a certain way, guarantee the minute you start making healthier choices, you're going to see a shift.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I think people will begin to, see like, okay, maybe I'll hold off on medication, and maybe, but at the end of the day, I think, like you said, medication is only going to take you so far. Medication is something that can start off as a stepping stone, but
quickly turn into a cage. You can quickly keep
because then now we fall under this trap of like, okay, let's start you at this dose, and then next time you come,
it has to go up.
Now we got to go up, and and then at that point it's like, okay, what happens once you hit a cap? So then now we have to go to stronger medications. Now we go to medications that are
a cocktail of different ones.
Oh yeah. Now we're on 2-3 different anti-anxiety, depression, mood stabilizers. Like, I think it's just a dangerous game that we like to play. And you guys know, like, we're not anti-medication. We're on freaking GLPs. Like,
that's a medication.
That's a medication. This isn't about, it's the doctors against us or the therapists against us. Not at all. Again, I'm a huge believer. I believe in therapy. I think if you've experienced any form of trauma, therapy can be beneficial. It doesn't have to be forever, and it's funny when I told my therapist that I was going to take a break, she was like, no, I don't think you should do that. And I had to really ask myself, like, okay, why am I stopping therapy? And, or why do I want to continue it? And I really felt like it got to the point where therapy became really exhausting because I just kept talking and talking. And I kind of felt like I was kind of getting stuck in a cycle of just processing and processing. And then now I'm like, well, I'm ready to kind of put into action the things that she's like, the tools that she's given me, the things that I've been able to like process and let go of. Like, how about I just try my life without therapy for a little bit? And honestly, I think I really have grown ever since seeing my therapist, but I've grown more after the fact that, I was able to do a lot of these things on my own.
Because you were like, we've talked about it, and I've identified it, and I've expressed what it was. Okay, so how do I heal from this? Well, that's our time. We'll have to get to it.
I think about sometimes like therapists, and again, you know what? I really loved my therapist, and there was a time where I really wanted to go back. We were going through a lot of things, and I had reached out to her, but she wasn't working at that office anymore, and I was really bummed. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this is a sign, because like I had tried reaching out to a different one and didn't work out. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm not gonna push it.
Yeah.
Because I do feel that some therapists will just give you little breadcrumbs, and then they're just like, cut, okay, all right, and I'm like, what the fuck? What am I going to do with all this? I literally just unloaded all this shit and I'm just holding it. And I'm like, okay, I'll just hold it for a week, because some therapists really don't give you any tools to process, and you need tools to help you process throughout the week.
Yeah, what do I do with all this?
Yeah, what do I do with all this? And that's what's happening in social media with these kids. They're listening to these people, word vomit all their trauma, and they're just left with all that, all those emotions, all those things for them to figure out how to process them. And then all they can do is just internalize it because they don't know what else to do with it. So again, I'm just like, all this information and just, it's doing so much damage. We want to call it awareness, but I think it's a lot more distraction than anything.
Well, it's like you said, with the person that wanted to continuously bring up, I was abused and this is how I was abused and this, and it's over and we've already heard this, okay, and you're just telling us again, okay. And you get even adults that do that, but then you think of like teens, and it's like, even as any teen in any generation, they just want to be heard. I want attention. I don't know how to get attention, but if I start screaming, I have disorders and I have stress and anxiety and depression, that's how I get attention. So, and again, some of them do require medication and some of them do need, it is a thing. But I would say, a good amount are just, like you said, we're trying to fit in somewhere. As a teen, I'm trying to have an identity. What do I do? And then they jump on social media and they have all that coming towards them. So, and I hate to sound like, because you mentioned like us, not being against medication, but, using it to where we understand that they're just tools, sounding like a broken record in regards to like, as we say it with like our sobriety episodes and with like fitness episodes, where it is about changing your habits. And I think when it comes to, if you are feeling like you have, slight depression or slight anxiety, really look into like, okay, what's my lifestyle like? How much sleep am I really getting? How much screen time am I doing? Do I have any like active hobbies? Am I doing anything that's actually stimulating me? Like, why do I always feel like I'm so pent up and I have all these things? Like, well, I realize I don't really do shit all day and I just, sit and watch TV and sleep. So it's like, again, if you change your habits, I'm not saying like, of course, like the fitness people, like just go work out, it fixes everything. It doesn't fix everything, but it sure does help with a lot of shit, At least try it. At least use that. If you're going to take medication and see a therapist, why don't you incorporate some healthy stuff? If they're not telling you that, let us or let someone like tell you. How about you just incorporate that into your daily life to see if it helps?
Because people don't want to ever believe that the solution is a lot more simple than they think. Yeah. They just don't.
They want to seem like they're like this extreme case of like, no one's ever heard of my shit.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'm like this crazy
we need to make
anomaly
a
of disorders.
New fucking medication just for them, because they're just so fucked that I don't know what's going to help them.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if as a child you just weren't, heard out enough. Like, I don't know. But, I get it. I remember when I was dealing with anxiety, I really thought like no one understands, like no one gets it. And, and in a way, no one understood it around me because no one was experiencing what I was experiencing. But the more that I did research, like the more that I was like, oh no, people do experience this. Yeah. And I see people have, they've overcome it. I think also too, that has a lot to do with when you go and research something, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a solution? Or are you looking for something just to reinforce
you want confirmation?
You want confirmation.
Yeah.
And it's like, you'll know immediately what you're searching for is what you're going to find. Yeah. If you want to find solutions, you're going to find solutions. You want to find something that's going to pull you deeper into the issue, you're going to find it. And I think more and more, it's just, it really sucks because like the way that the algorithm is, it will, whatever you're thinking about that day, it's going to confirm it. Yeah, it's going to
read your mind.
It just exactly really does. There was a time where I was like, I can't remember what I had watched. And it was like for a week straight. It was just these awful videos about like crime and murder. And I'm like, what? how, and it's just like, at that point that I'm just thinking like, holy shit, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna walk, and someone's gonna freaking come behind me and like bash my head. Like, that's how crazy our mind gets, right? Like, it reinforces our fears. It keeps that, whatever feeling you have, it keeps it alive. So I encourage people, one, get out of your head. Get out of your head. Therapy is most definitely an amazing tool you can use. But also, find outside of therapy, I think we also need to find a safe place. I mean, I'm glad in a way this has kind of become our safe place. But also I think with each other, I mean, we're really lucky to have, the relationship and the friendship that we have, because we are each other's safe place. But also, you need to find some confidence within yourself. Yeah. Like, don't
independence, not dependence.
Yeah. Because if we continue to depend on something outside of us, I think we can very easily fall into, this we can fall victim to all the stuff that is at our fingertips.
You can become dependent even on things that are good for you, like... Yeah. You shouldn't be dependent on anything. And this is coming from, again, two people who take GLP-1s and supplements. Like, we know we use those as tools along with stuff that we do. Like, we still have to put in work of exercising, of eating healthy, of getting enough sleep, of staying hydrated, doing all these things to be healthy, so that we're not just dependent on the GLP-1 medication. We're not just dependent on the supplements, because what if those are taken away? Am I just like, oh, that's it, I guess I'm just gonna not be healthy anymore? So like, if you are going to therapy and if you're on, medications, just don't become dependent on them. You put in the, if not equal, then more work into using those tools, but into getting better. Again, because it's about like, you want to be free. You want to be free of whatever you're feeling, and whatever you have to do from your part, you need to put in that effort,
Yeah, I just, again, I don't ever want to judge anyone that is on medication. I know that there is chemical imbalances. I know
for sure.
There's things that play a huge role on, people experiencing depression. There's different types of depression. There's, the severity of the depression. But ultimately, what you want to treat are the symptoms. So, if you're feeling low, get up and go for a walk. Yeah. Guarantee you'll release some dopamine and you're going to feel a lot better. And again, it just sounds so simple, but sometimes the solution really is just simple.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be so complicated. And
it's one of those things that we said, like, where I think we were talking about it with drinking. And again, not to always bring it back to sobriety or whatever, but we were saying, like, because some people will be like, I feel depressed. Like, we'll get up and go for a walk. Like, you don't understand. It's debilitating depression. I can't physically get up and go. It's like, okay, I can understand that. But understand that if you just push yourself, even if it's painful, and just a little bit, you walked for a minute, tomorrow you'll walk for 2 minutes, like something, it'll just, it will, again, you have to create these habits. And like I said, we compared it to drinking, where it's just like, some people will say, like, or what we said, the only way that we found out that I don't really want to drink anymore, or as much, or whatever, is to stop drinking. Like, and again, people are just like, I can't, because it's just become, that's just, that's how I have fun, or this is how I relieve stress, or this is, whatever. I need it. And it's just like, one, you don't need it. No, you don't need anything in life besides, like we said, air, water, and food. And so don't say that, but like, the only way that you really find out, like, if you don't want to do this anymore, is to stop doing it. Like, to remove it from your life, to see, hey, I don't want this anymore. So.
Yeah. And again, I just want to emphasize, not in any way trying to be insensitive to anybody's, experience towards depression or even addiction. Addiction is a real thing. And you do get to a point where maybe your body does
become
need
dependent.
Alcohol, and maybe you do get to a point where you become dependent on medication for anxiety, depression, mood disorders. Again, we're not doctors, we're not professionals. You really need to see, if you do feel like you're at a point of where I can't even get up, I've seen people experience that type of depression, and it is scary, and I wouldn't even know what to tell them, you know. So it's like, we're not in any way professionals at this, but we're speaking more to the people that are still able to function and to do a little bit more, and they're, you know, thinking like, how can I feel better? Like, it sometimes it's simple choices, it's simple changes that can really benefit your, you know, your mood and just your life, you know.
Well, so, like you said, sometimes people will take the medication and it's like they say like, okay, when I do the medication I feel normal and it helps them to be able to function better. And it's like, okay, but then when they are feeling better and they are functioning normal, they don't at that point go out and become more active, go out and be more social, get new hobbies. They just like, okay, well, I feel better, and I'll wait to take my medication when I start feeling crappy again, and then I'll take it and feel better. And it's just like, during that time that you feel better, start something new. When you are able to face your fear or to get up and do stuff, do something at that point. I'm not saying go and run a marathon or go freaking, you know, do something crazy, but just little changes, you know?
Yeah. I just want to say, because I feel like, not that we went a little bit off topic, but, you know, going back to the victim society and just the victim mindset, you know, I do feel that a lot of times people that have been, you know, victim of some form of trauma, or, you know, they've just experienced something that they haven't been able to, you know, to get past, like, I just want to say to those people, you know, again, it's not to discredit any of their experiences or what they're going through, but I think one of the first steps that you can take, and I feel like for me as someone that has experienced trauma, is to not identify as a victim, and, you know, just really begin to change that story, you know. Because I think a lot of times with these people that fall into this victim mindset or this victim society, is like they feel like they're always in that place where they were victimized, or, you know, where they experienced this trauma. And a lot of times that people that have been victim of something horrible, they're constantly sharing it and constantly talking about it. And it's like, we got to be very, very careful with that, because you just get stuck. And it becomes your identity, and there is something actual chemical that happens where there's, you know, the trauma. I remember a therapist that, it was actually when we went to marriage counseling, and, you know, he had talked about how, you know, when you're in fight or flight, you're constantly in processing things from the back of your brain. And there's a therapy, I can't remember what it's called. It's not cognitive therapy, but I forgot what it's called, where it helps the trauma or the experience come to the frontal lobe of the brain, and you're able to process it. So there is, you know, a lot of benefits to that, to going to someone that can help you with that, with processing the trauma and not being stuck in it, you know. And I think a lot of people are processing things from the back of their brain, and still, or lack of processing it, but still living in that, you know, that experience as if it's happening right now. And, you know, I think at that point, you really should, you know, look for someone that can help you process that, and to begin to get past it, and to ultimately heal from it. But, you know, again, everyone's experience is different, but I think what mainly we wanted to talk about, and I think we covered it pretty well, is the victim society and what it's doing. And I think the damage that I feel that it's caused, you know, especially within these last 5 years, since TikTok took off, since Instagram has become, you know, Instagram started as like people taking pictures of their food. Now it's like everyone's, you know, I mean, there was even a trauma therapist that would literally have like little mini sessions on her lives, and it's like, oh my God. I mean, it's great, you know, I think what she was doing was cool, but you know, you're just exposing a lot of people to some information that can be very damaging, you know. So
and then hopefully this, you know, at least just bringing the topic up, will help you either if you're someone who maybe is going through things, or like ourselves as parents that maybe have teens or kids that are going through things, help them to, again, or to be able to identify some of the things that are causing this, victimhood and social media and all these things, so that you can kind of get a better grasp on it, and so that you can,
right.
Be able to attack it from a different angle, and be able to, not get stuck in what everyone kind of gets stuck in with it. So, and again, I think you said it, like hopefully this didn't trigger or offend, and it's sort of like, because we were there too, it's in bringing it back to like the sobriety thing. Like, no one wants to hear like, you have a problem, you have a drinking problem, you're an alcoholic. It's just like, forget these. Like, I don't want to hear this. No one wants to ever feel like they're being attacked. And this episode wasn't to do that. It should just bring to light some of the things that we've noticed on like social media, and how, trauma is being handled and talked about and discussed. And, hopefully it will, again, by talking about it, it'll bring to light some of these things that will help you to process things better. So
yeah. So really quick, I just want to, the therapy that I was talking about it's called TPT, and it's also, there's cognitive behavioral therapy, which I think that's known a little bit more, but TPT is the therapy that actually helps you move the trauma from the back of the brain to the frontal lobe of the brain. So
I remember that too.
Yeah. Just wanted to kind of let
good
you guys
thing to
know.
Look into research.
Which is, I know that it's known to address post-traumatic stress disorder, any type of child abuse, SA abuse. So yeah, just kind of wanted to leave that last little bit of info there. And yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and start wrapping it up. Thank you guys for tuning in. And again, I hope it really, it helps. It's why we want to put these episodes out. One, to just be able to have a nice conversation with each other, but, to bring to light some things. So hopefully it did help, and you'll do some research on it, and, go from there. So we will see you guys next time. Not sure what the topic will be, but we'll try to make it interesting for you guys.
Yeah.
All right. You guys have a beautiful day.
Bye.